So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today here at Corporate College's webinar series, Live with the Experts. As many of you know, each of the sessions are really geared towards providing you relevant, timely information and tools and topics that are going to really support you and set you up for success. Adjusting to this new norm is really occurring on a daily basis. And we're all shifting to this new reality of working, learning, and living. During this time, we want you to know Tri-C is still committed to serving you and your team during this rapid time of change by providing you actionable resources and information to both help you and your team not only succeed, but really thrive during this time, wherever you're located, whether you're still at the work site or working remotely. Our webinar series is just one of Corporate College's newest resources to prepare the workforce for overcoming these challenges, both personal and also business challenges, but then also achieving those goals. We do that through the four main themes of our series. Today's session is actually working remotely and how to improve that. Other sessions are on virtual leadership, navigating a transition, or personal health and well-being. And as many of you know, Corporate College has really quite a distinguished team of talented facilitators and subject matter experts. Today, I am very thrilled to present to you our facilitation specialist and presenter, Caroline Walker. Prior to joining
There.
Tri-C, Caroline's role was an academic support specialist at Baldwin Wallace University. Almost said BW. Um,
That's okay.
Somebody may not know that, but she was there for quite some time. But then for the past 10 years, Caroline has served as a career specialist here at Tri-C Career Center. Caroline specializes in student success through career exploration and development and working with hundreds of Tri-C students, alumni, community members. She has really helped so many people explore new career and academic paths, obtain experiential learning through internships and co-ops, and also build interviewing confidence. And you can often find her presenting many different programs such as resumes that get results and etiquette brunch and other programs like that, besides specializing in career assessments such as My Plan. We sincerely appreciate Caroline being here today and really offering us information about being ready for that next potential interview. So with that, I'm happy to introduce to you Caroline Walker. Hi, Caroline. How are you this afternoon?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here. This is exciting.
Oh, good, good. Thank you so much for being here because I know um, your team, you and your team especially, have been very busy lately. You're really supporting a lot of students and a lot of community members. So this information today is just so timely.
Yes, we are. And I think these webinars that Corporate College is doing is also really exciting and really timely. So very excited. So I will jump into it. Is that
Great,
cool?
thank you. Mhm.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on maybe your lunch break to talk about interviewing. Teach yourself to interview. So, I want to begin with kind of behind the scenes of the purpose of an interview. And I like to think about this because as I work with students and alumni and job seekers, I like to step back and remind everybody the employer's point of view of an interview as well as the job seeker's point of view for an interview. So the employer wants to evaluate your skills, your ability to learn new skills, um, let you know more about the position, about the company, maybe if it's a new role or something exciting, and then really get to know you as a person and see that you are a good fit. And then, of course, on the job seeker end, you want to communicate those skills and show that you are capable of doing that position or working for that company or in that new role. You want to learn as much as you can the logistics, the location, if it's a new proposal, if it's a short term project, a long term project. And then, of course, you want to determine if it's a good fit for you, if you can do the position with the people in that environment. So I like to keep that in the back of our minds when we think about Sometimes people get really stressed out about interviewing or working with employers. And if you take a step back and think, why are they asking me this? What do I want to know? Hopefully that helps you feel a little bit more at ease. So, types of interviews, and I know that my colleagues have presented on this in depth, so I only have one slide where it's really quickly reminding you that there are virtual interviews and more or less in-person interviews, although nowadays we're seeing, almost 100% go virtual, which is over the phone or over a video. And of course, with those, you want to take it the same, regardless if this is a virtual interview or an in-person interview. The tips that I'm going to share really fit both because we're going to talk about preparing for the actual interview itself. So the quick logistics of testing your equipment and knowing where you're going and all those types of things fit for both, but how you'd answer questions would apply to both a virtual or a in-person interview. So before the interview begins, there are two things that I like to stress to people, and that is learn and look. So to prepare for the interview, you want to learn as much as you can. And that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different folks. So I just put research as that broad category. So there are people who are really great at researching. They jump on the company's website, the company's LinkedIn profile, maybe Glassdoor. Maybe they look at profiles of people who work for those companies and they really just dig in on the web and learn as much as they can. That's great. If you don't find yourself as in depth when you research, you can always start by asking around. Ask people you know, people who might have worked for that company, for that person. Just learn as much as you can about the position, about the company, about the role. I like to tell students that if you were studying for a final exam for, let's say, a history class and you weren't told any parameters, where would you begin? You kind of just want to know, maybe the highlights, maybe the people, places, things. It's kind of the same idea. It makes you feel more confident going into an interview, and it helps you know the background of where the company's coming from, so you can maybe find out more about that role. And then, of course, you want to look your best. So, I think we all know your most professional self in terms of everything that you can do in the morning and even the night before, days before, in order to get your perfect interview outfit prepared and ready and clean and shiny and all those things, and look your best for the role. So they always say, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. That little cutesy thing. However, I always like to keep in mind, know what type of clothes might be in that atmosphere, and then err on the side of more professionalism. So when I work with IT students, for example, they know they're working for an environment or would be working for an environment that is very jean friendly and it's a very casual environment. Especially now as a lot of us work from home, it's a little more casual. So understand the culture, which of course you do that, you learn that in your research, but then dress for, dressed more professional than that particular role. You want to walk in with as much respect as possible. And then, of course, then I put this on here for first impressions count because it's important to practice this a lot of times. Making eye contact, smiling, again, handshake with this might look a little different moving forward. Who knows if we'll continue with elbow bumps and whatnot. But practicing introducing your full name, speak clearly. I always like to tell people if you go by a different name, maybe you shorten your name is Jim. You go by Jim, your name is James. If your resume says James, maybe you introduce yourself with my name is James. However, you can call me Jim. Whatever works for you. It helps put that on there. And because we don't do this every day, you probably hang out with your friends and family members who know your name and know your style. I like to tell people to practice because this could feel somewhat awkward in terms of getting started with the interview. Okay. So I really quickly went through those because the main portion of the presentation I like to talk about are how to prepare for those common questions. So if you Google, common questions for an interview or, questions for an interview, you might get a list. You will definitely get a list of hundreds and hundreds of questions. And I've put some common ones on the screen here, and I've categorized these questions in a few different areas to help not make it so overwhelming. And part of the reason that I came up with this categorizing is because I work with, as you heard, hundreds of different students, alumni, job seekers from all sorts of backgrounds in terms of what they've studied, the education level that they currently have and are pursuing, different fields, different career paths. And so this is where I really begin because it can apply across the board. So maybe you don't have an interview coming up right now, but maybe husband, wife, daughter, son will sooner or later. Hopefully you can apply these tips with that person as well, because it really fits across the board. So these categories that I've put them in, this elevator speech, experience, abilities, career goals, and strengths, I want to focus on that. And then this is where my acronym TEACH yourself comes into play. And TEACH stands for Tell Me About Yourself, Experience, Abilities, Career Goals, and Hire Me. So with that, if you are a note taker, this is where you can write down the word teach, and then we are going to go through each letter more in depth. And before I jump in, I know I was really really fast. So I want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions or comments, please put that in the chat and I will make sure that I get to everything within this presentation as much as possible. If anybody has any interview coming up, type a quick thing in the chat, maybe something you might be nervous about or something that might be a little anxious for. Please share that as well, and we can, give you extra encouragement. Okay, so starting with the top with T for teach. T for teach, T for tell me about yourself. So this is your elevator speech, which is somewhat of a dated term depending on how old you are. You may or may not know what this is. So if I take you back in the day before you had the internet at your fingertips, the way that you could, talk to somebody would be to share an elevator ride with that person. So if you were sharing an elevator ride with the CEO or head marketing manager, what have you, and it was just you and that person, and you had that 30-second elevator ride, what could you share about yourself in that time? And that's where the term the elevator speech came from. So it's short, it's that 30 seconds, and it really should incorporate who you are, a little bit about your background, why you want this job, maybe why you want that position, why you want to work for that company, kind of like where you've been and where you're looking to go. So if you have a resume and you have a summary of qualifications on your resume, which we encourage people to include, this might look similar to that. So it might be tweaked differently from position to position, from industry to industry, but you want to make sure that you have all of this information there. A lot of interviews start with tell me about yourself. So it's when you're preparing and you're thinking, okay, they're going to ask me about myself. It's very easy. Sometimes they might kind of, they might not say that so verbatim. It might just be, so why do you want this position? Or why are you looking to change careers or change companies? Typically it might be towards the beginning of the interview, but wherever it fits into the interview, this is when you want that answer ready of the tell me about yourself, your elevator speech. So again, I encourage people to write it down, say it out loud, practice saying out loud, because what happens is you find yourself maybe going on and thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm talking about something 10 years ago and then 8 years ago. And then you're like, at this rate, it's going to take me 10 minutes to get to the point. Here I am. Or sometimes you might just totally overlook the obvious of why you're so excited for that position or for that company or to change, if you're a career changer type of thing. So I encourage you to write this down and, practice even saying it as you are driving to the interview or right before you, Skype or anything like that. Okay. So E stands for experience. And this goes very closely to A, which is ability. So experience is, have you done this work before? So if you are seasoned in your career, so to speak, and you are looking at the job description for a position and you think, oh my goodness, I've done this in so many different roles. This is great. This is like the next level for me. Or this is just, maybe it's the same type of job in a different company or a different department or something like that. So if you have the experience doing what is asked of the job description, great. You want to be prepared to discuss that. And questions can look very, very broad depending on what you're going into. So if you are in a role where you've done a lot of customer service and the role requires customer service, they're probably going to ask you something about customer service. Something like, tell me about a time where you've provided, exceptional customer service, or what does customer service mean to you? Something like that. So where though this acronym to help prepare everyone is broad across the board, experience and abilities is where you'll take a little extra time and think about specifically about your industry. So I have accountants, for example, that will tell me they have heard the same type of quote unquote question about how they close out their books or um, how they do something with Excel. So they get the similar type of questions. I've had nurses and people that work in the healthcare system say something about patient bedside care is always asked. So once you get into, that mode of hearing similar questions, that's great. Make a note of it, and then you can get, specific in as you prepare. And really, they're looking for that experience. So if you've done this work before, you would want to answer with that, situation, action, and result, which again is similar to how you might put information on your resume. So if they say, tell me about a time when you have that experience, you want to talk about that situation, about what you did, the action you took, and then the so what, that the result. So before an interview, you might want to go through your employment history of your resume and see what positions you shared with that employer, what they already kind of know about you, and think back to what you did in those roles that might be similar to the role that's coming up, or what might be exactly the same. So there is a question about not having direct experience with job functions. And this is where the abilities piece comes up. So if you have the ability to do the work, so can you do this type of work? This is where you want to focus on that. So sort of the E and the A kind of balance each other out, because if you have experience, great. If you don't have maybe exact experience or maybe experience at all doing that particular thing, this is where you want to talk about those transferable skills. So skills that can be applied from one experience to another. So your role in that interview is communicating your skills and that you can do the job, that you're able to do the job. So if they ask you about a time when maybe you had poor customer service, or tell me about a time when you managed a group of 5 or more, or worked on a team, or maybe it's something more specific to that industry. You can be honest that you've never managed 5 employees at once. However, you have experience doing something else. Maybe you had a intern over the summer and you were the sole person for that intern and you were responsible for creating the intern's assignments, hiring the intern, coming up with a physical spot for that intern to sit, and the daily routines or the daily schedule for the intern. The intern would go to different meetings, so you were overseeing one person for maybe one season or one semester. So you can take those skills that you learned in that role and um, make it apply to what they are specifically asking. So what they, again, think of what the employer wants to know. The employer wants to know that you can do the job and fit in with the group, with the team, with that, cohesiveness. So if you haven't done exactly that, but you can, this is where you really want to talk about that and be ready for those limitations. So if you know that you are a career changer and you are going from one career to another or one industry to another, or maybe you're looking for that next step in your career. So that it's the next piece in that career, but maybe you haven't done some of the requirements of the job description to date. You want them to know that you are able to do so, and to have examples of those transferable skills from job A to job B, and it might not even be a job. I work with people that are returning to the workforce, or students that are very fresh in their career. So I say job out of habit, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a job. It could be a volunteer program that you were passionate about and in charge of, or took a leadership role in. It could be something maybe in the classroom if you were on a project with fellow classmates, and then you talk about the classroom experience into the job. So take what you have and preach about it, if you will. Okay, C stands for career goals. So this is my least favorite one, to be honest. This is the where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years type of thing. So again, thinking through why employers want to know that. So from an employer's perspective, they want to see how dedicated you are to the company or the industry. Again, they want to get to know you a little bit better than what you're, a little bit more than just your resume. Your resume hopefully got you in the door, got you that interview, but now the resume needs to come to life with the interview. So if you are, again, I've worked with people who are looking for a position for 5 years and they know they want to retire. And so we kind of go back and forth. How honest do you want to be? I tell people to be as honest as possible, but of course, you don't want to set up your own limitations. So I never recommend saying, hey, I'm only looking to work bare minimum and, get my paycheck and leave. They want to see your level of commitment. For different industries, that can mean different things. So some industries are known to have 50+ hour work weeks. Some industries are, it's a little bit more, it might be a 24/7 type of role. If it's a type of industry like nursing or something where there are different roles at different times. There are companies where sales is their number one thing, and they just want to make sure that at the end of the day, if everybody had to pick up a phone and make a sales call, they'll be comfortable with it. So hopefully in your research, you're learning a little bit more about the company, about the industry, but about the company and the department, to know that you will be a good fit for what they are looking for. If you're looking for something that's a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, hopefully you know that before the actual interview, just by researching, asking around, and kind of knowing what the company looks like. But in general, if you have if you're on the very beginning of your career or more towards the beginning of your career and you have a dream job, or you have the um, If you have a a long-term goal, you can share that. If you're not quite sure what your long-term goal is, you can also share that too. Again, this is a way for them to get to know you a little bit and see where you are within the company. And again, also just be honest with anything that you need or you like, logistically speaking. So if there are different commitments, I work with people who are returning to the workforce or working. I work with a lot of stay-at-home moms that are then coming back after their children are older. And I tell them to be honest about that as well, to say, I'm looking for something part-time while my kids are in school or whatever kind of, whatever works with wherever you are within your career. Okay, and then H stands for hire me. So this is your strength. So this is probably the most important one, but it's at the end for the acronym. So this is what makes you stand out for the position for that company. Why should they hire you? So this one can be pretty challenging depending on, your level of not just expertise, but your level of talking, your comfort level of talking about yourself. So this one, in my experience, I've known many people, this is their weakness in terms of talking about themselves. So I start by saying, ask around, ask your family, ask your friends, ask people that you work with to reiterate to you what your strengths are, because I call it the mom test, if you will. So if you ask your mom, or if you are a mom, you could probably tell me what your strengths are for your kids. But if I ask you what your strengths are, that might be a little bit, it might put you a little bit more on the spot, right? So if you ask around and say, hey, what do I bring to the table? Or, help me brainstorm here. What are my strengths? Why should they hire me? I think that's always a great place to begin. And want to be mindful of this. This is your time to brag, but you want to be mindful of, again, in terms of the industry or where you are, who else might be interviewing. So if you are, I work with a lot of students that might be recent grads. If you're interviewing, if everybody has the college degree in the same field, what else sets you apart? So this is where you want to kind of think outside of the box sometimes. Maybe it is an outside organization, a leadership role that you took, and hopefully you're highlighting that on your resume, and then that's, something you can talk about. Maybe it's something completely different outside of your actual industry. So we usually use an example of an accounting student who is super personable and then also super tech savvy. So you might not think of those two. You might not think, not every single accountant is going to be personable and tech savvy. So maybe that's something um, to put into your um, into your strengths. So this might look different, again, from the employer a couple ways. They might say, why should we hire you? Or share your top strength, share your 3 top strengths. What makes you stand out for this position? So they might word it a little differently. They might ask all of those questions, which seem a little repetitive, and that's okay, because in an interview, I call it your personal infomercial, where you'll be saying kind of the same themes over and over again. And it might sound repetitive to you as the job seeker going through it, but just like a good infomercial, at the end of the infomercial, you're kind of curious if the product actually works, right? Even the most bizarre products out there. So for yourself, by the end, you really want them to know who you are, and whatever your infomercial might look like, which should really start with your top strengths. Okay, so I'm going to put up the recap, if you will, of the TEACH acronym, so that you can kind of see it from a glance. So when you get that interview, you find out about the interview, it's coming up in a couple days or in a week or what have you, and hopefully you don't panic. You take a deep breath. It's awesome, great news that you got the interview. You maybe you've done your research. Maybe now you want to keep doing your research. And then as you are thinking about it, you kind of start with this template. So you write down, tell me about yourself. Okay, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And again, that can look different depending maybe from interview to interview in terms of what you want to share and what you don't want to share. Or the order could change. Maybe you want to start with the why you're so passionate about sales or whatever the product is or whatever the mission of the company is, making it about them. The experience and abilities. This is the one, of course, where it will take a little bit of fine tuning as you continue on in your interviewing to make it fit your industry specific if you can. If you can't, if you're like, this is my first interview for this company, I have no idea what they're going to ask, go back to the job description. What type of questions would they want to know based on the job description? What type of experience are they going to want to know that you've done? Or what do they want to know that you are capable of doing to bring to that position? Career goals, your future plan with maybe within the company, maybe within the industry, maybe just within yourself in terms of, here's where this is what I like to do, this is what I'm hoping to get, type of thing. And then hire me. You're the reason they should hire you, the strengths that you are bringing to the table. So there is a question, what's the best way to talk about recognition received without sounding like bragging? So I go back and forth because an interview is really your chance to brag. And if it sounds like bragging, it's a good interview. They want to know why you are the best for that position, the best for that department, for that role, and they want to know, what you will bring to the team. So if you've received recognition for something, you can kind of think of that in a couple of ways. You could think of that in your hire me, in your strength. Maybe that's a strength, like you should hire me because I am recognized for being the top salesman at my company currently, and I will be, I will bring that dedication and that passion or that top salesmanship to your company or to your department or wherever the next place is. Um, or it might be in that experience role where if they talk about a time when, tell me about a time that you went above and beyond, or tell me about a time that you did more than your share, or that you showed your dedication to the position, the company, the whatever. Maybe that's when you bring it up, that you were recognized for some sort of product or service, whatever you did. And this is what you did, this is how you got there, and this may be what you learned from it, or maybe how you move on from it. Okay, another question about the tell me about yourself. Somebody was recently let go. Very sorry to hear that. Do I need to mention this in my elevator pitch? How do I talk about this without making myself look bad? Okay, so this I can argue either way almost sometimes. So I think the reason that you were let go might be the making yourself look bad. So you might not want to overly share depending on what happened, right? So this is a good time I can plug that the Career Center does mock interviews with community members, students, and alumni, and you can talk that through with a career coach. I usually ask, like, tell me the real story, and then let's filter it for the interview. So if you were let go for, if it was a very, I'm going to say quick reason, like your company was downsizing due to budget cuts, or the company had a different ownership, or there was a merge. If there's like a quick way that you can talk about the company quickly, I think that would be helpful to say, before all this hit, or I'm on the job market now because I recently was let go from a company due to, and maybe you fill in that due to, very short and sweet, because then that doesn't make you look bad. That's just explaining where you are, who you are, why you are interviewing. Again, the employer wants to know what, they're curious too. Why are you looking for a job? Why are you looking for a job here? Especially depending on what your resume looks like. If you have 20 plus years experience with one company, I might be curious, why now? Why are you looking for something now after 20 years? It's similar to those that are returning to work after having a 15-year gap. I might think, you haven't been working for 15 years. Why do you want to come back now? So it's just putting that information, on the table. So you're filling the gap for them. They don't have to create a reason in their head. If the reason you were let go from a position, or maybe the reason you left a position, is negative, again, I would think of ways to not focus on that negative reasoning. Um, you even something as very elegant as a difference of opinion. I left because there was a difference of opinion, or it was not the right fit, or I had reached everything that I could possibly get out of that position. It wasn't fulfilling anymore. I'm looking for new challenges. Um, Sometimes if it is a logistic thing, maybe you were on the road a lot, or the hours were really rough, and now you're looking for something a little bit more mainstream, or something a little bit more dependable in terms of set schedule or set salary, when you were coming from a, commission base, something like that. I think is very fair to share, and it doesn't make you look bad, because you're being honest, and you're being honest with why you're looking, without saying, you know, hated my old boss and we would yell at each other and one of us had to leave and it was me. So you don't want to paint the picture that anything super negative happened. Really, through all of these categories, you don't want to paint that picture, but it is helpful to start that interview on the right track. Okay, so sorry, I'm scrolling through another question here. For career goals, is it too aggressive to include a comment like, one of my goals is to be an amazing position, fill that in, with the opportunity to blank and move in this role? So I think this person's asking, is it too aggressive to say, sort of like, here's my entire career plan? I want to do this, and I want to hopefully get to this, and hopefully get to this. I don't think it's too aggressive, but I would advise you to kind of know the audience. So if it's possible to know who's in the room, or who's on the panel, or who's on the Skype call, I think that's helpful. If you are alluding to the fact that you want the job of the person interviewing you, you might want to be careful with how you word that. I mean, nobody wants to interview someone and think, I think this person's out for my job, and I'm just a little too worried about that. On the flip side, though, maybe that's not the case at all. You have a timeline in your mind, and you know how you need to get there. I think it's safe to share that. So with students, what I specifically tell them is to make sure you bring it back to that position. So I work with many students, and you might be more seasoned in your career, but I think the example will hopefully help. So I work with students who are applying for an internship, and sometimes internships the job responsibilities are across the board, and it's not exactly their quote unquote dream job. And when they're asked, what's your dream job? Or I see you're studying this, or I see you have this degree. What do you hope to do with this? I had a student kind of give the answer and just say, I one day want to be a software technician. Boom, whatever it was. My advice was, and it was helpful the next interview, was to then take it back to this position, to say, well, my dream job is, I hopefully would like to see myself be X to be this role, to be this position. Maybe you want to give them a time frame, maybe not. My dream job is to be the CEO of a company. This position will help me build the skills such as A, B, and C. And that shows that you are committed to that role um, for reasons that might be a little bit selfish, but also they are benefiting from your interest in those skills and those knowledge. So you are going to be a little bit more passionate about that role um, because you have an invested interest in it. You want to gain these skills, you want to gain this experience so that you can continue down your career path. So I don't think it's too aggressive, but you might want to practice exactly what you're going to share about that. If you're going to share this entire timeline, are you only going to share maybe your dream job and then say, this is what I hope to get from this, and kind of go that way. Hopefully that helps. Um, helps that person there. Okay, sorry, I'm just scrolling. And Jerry, if I missed anything, please chime in. I'm just doing a quick scroll to make sure that I've answered everyone's questions so far.
Yep, I think you've and some of them were similar. I think one just popped up though too.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. So the question is, for more seasoned or older individuals, is it okay to be honest that you desire to retire from your next company? So I would say yes. Um, some people might say no. I would say yes, and here's why. I work with seasoned job seekers all the time, and they kind of laugh sometimes at that. Where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And they'll say, Caroline, I'm going to retire, but I don't know, why would they hire me when they could hire somebody else? And I tell them, I say, I have a stack of student resumes right here. As I'm looking through them, they've worked at positions for 6 months, 1 year, 18 months, 3 years tops, right? That is more of the norm, that people are working 3, 4 years and then changing jobs, changing companies. There's no guarantee that if you hire an 18 or a 20-year-old, that person is going to work for your company for 20 plus years. It's kind of the reality right now. So yourself walking into a position saying, I'm going to work here until I retire, that's actually more of a guarantee. So if you use that as your strength or as your, you know, I'm loyal to my job. Maybe that's one of your strengths that you want to share. I'm dedicated. I think it's safe to be honest. Maybe you don't necessarily need to give them, if you know the date that you're going to retire, great. If you're more thinking, I'm looking for that one last job within my full-time career before I transition to the next piece. I really like to be this position, and I'll tell you why. I'm passionate about A, B, or C. Um, Maybe you're looking to transition from full-time to part-time or from part-time to full-time. It's kind of the same thing. I'm interested in re-entering the workforce full-time after years of part-time because, or I'm looking for part-time because. So I think it is very okay to say that. I think being more honest is helpful. You don't want to make the employer guess, because what if they guess wrong? So if you don't say that and they are thinking it like this person only wants to work for a year, they might be thinking worse than what you actually would share. If you know you have at least 3 years, maybe say it that way. Um, and maybe you don't necessarily have a plan after that. You just know that you are definitely committed to working 5 years before you think about taking any sort of retirement benefit. And this is the direction that you're going in. So that was a good question.
Mhm.
And thoughts on, where do you see yourself in the future, with a response that indicates that you're not sure? Okay, so I will be honest with you. The whole, where do you see yourself in the future, or the C, the career goals, is my least favorite question in an interview. I get stressed about this question, the whole, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And what I would answer, if you don't have a true linear goal, or you're not quite sure, I would be honest about that and bring it. Again, this is to help prepare yourself. So you want to be ready for the question, right? So I would focus on maybe what you do know, what you do like doing. If you know that you want to stay in the industry that you're in, if you know that you are, let's say you're into sales and you really like working sales, you like working at that, you know, that person to person sales. You really have no interest in moving up for whatever reason. Maybe you share that. You share, I love what I do. A, B, and C. Share what you do. Maybe share what you love about it. Um, I love connecting with customers. I love doing this and this. I hope to be doing that for as long as I'm able to. I I don't have a long-term projection to run any sort of company or department because I don't necessarily want to take on those responsibilities that would take me away from what I truly love doing. And then share what you truly love doing. Um, I think that is a honest response. It focuses on what you like to do. And again, it shows your commitment of, I want to do this role. I plan to be in this role a while because I like, kind of the day-to-day action of that role. Okay. So moving forward to here at the end of the interview. So at the end, and this actually could go along with that last question. So at the end of the interview, typically they're going to say, "Do you have any questions for us?" And the only wrong answer is no. No, thank you. I have no questions. You want to show your level of commitment, of investment, knowledge of the company, the department. So you want to have some questions prepared. So if you go back to the very beginning where you're doing that research and you're asking around and you're learning as much as you can, this is where some questions should hopefully pop in. Maybe you want to know if there are any, typical tracks within the company, leadership tracks where you can become more invested in the company or can, grow within your role. So maybe that's the question that you have for them. So when they say, "Where do you see yourself in the future?" You could say, "Actually, that was one of the questions I had for you. What is a typical trajectory plan of somebody that starts with this role in this department? What's the average, are there opportunities for professional development or joining different committees throughout the company or department?" This is a great chance to also learn um, clarify anything about the position. So if you're like, I saw this position online and I did some research. My only question is, it says hours are flexible here, but then over here it said something else. So you can kind of clarify, nicely about any logistics you might have about the position. Or if the person has recently left, like why is this position open? Again, sometimes in research you can learn. Sometimes it's a little bit harder depending on what the position is. So you can ask, is this a new position? Is this department, has this department been expanding the last 5 years or, seeing any downside the last 5 years? That type of thing. So I think that's always helpful because it lets you know kind of what's going on. If somebody has recently left, recently moved on, sometimes that's a great sign. Um, Sometimes people leave you then, maybe whatever was on the desk beforehand. So maybe there's some projects that you're expected to continue on. If it's a new role, that might be exciting too, depending on what you're interested in. Is this a time where you can totally, start from scratch and write the playbook yourself? Are you able to be creative in this role? What are the parameters for what where you can and can't cross type of thing? Um, okay, I think I just answered that question. Is it appropriate or not to ask why the position is available? Yes, absolutely. I think that, like I said, I think it's a great way to see how you could fit into the department or into the company. I like to ask what the company's goals are. Somebody said, yes, I think that's great. And you can, they're not already clearly stated online in their company or their website, maybe you could be more specific, like what are the team's goals or what's the goal for this department? Again, you asking questions also kind of lets them learn a little bit about you. So if you say, I like to learn about the goals, to me, I think you're more of a big picture type of person. You want to know the larger piece of the puzzle type of thing. And that might be great for some companies. Some companies, just because you ask a question doesn't mean it's the wrong question. Sometimes it's just not the right fit at the right time. Okay, a question about virtual interviews. Without the benefit of body language in virtual interviews, what suggestions do you have to be seen as more personable? So the hard part about a virtual interview is that eye contact happens between you and a camera and not really that face to face. So that is a good way right there is to get in the habit. If you can see the difference between me looking down at my keys or if I had notes right there versus looking at the camera. It's subtle, and it feels kind of awkward. So you might want to practice, but that is step number one, as much as possible, look at the camera because the camera is the eye contact. Also, you want to smile, and even over a phone interview, they can hear that smile in your voice. So that is very important. And sometimes even overly smiling or overly getting excited type of thing. It's you're depending on how your camera is set up. This afternoon, for example, I'm standing. I feel a little more comfortable standing, and I think I can project a little more energy standing. So you might want to think about that or do that. And honestly, I would do a practice round with a friend even or a career coach of putting your camera up and seeing like what looks a little bit better if I stand, if I get a little bit closer to the camera, if I step back, and then they can see more of my shoulders. And I think um, that can be helpful for sure. Okay, and then after the interview, really two main things. You've done it, so it's awesome. The first thing you want to make note of is the thank you note. Be timely. So one of your questions in the interview can be about the process. So there's a lot of different videos and encouragements to ask for the job at that time. Like, okay, is there any reason you wouldn't hire me? Or what are you looking for? What's the number one thing you're looking for of this position? And then kind of spinning it to reassure that you have that thing. But you want to afterwards thank them for their time. You want to thank them for, speaking with you, learning more about the position. It's respectful. I think it's totally fine to do email. Email is like, totally the norm. I do write letter on here because I think it is um, a special touch to do if you're able to do that. So if you know how to get the letter to that person in a timely way. So typically this is when you're interviewing internally in-house, and maybe you have an intermail system and you are able to get the note quickly to that person without running to the post office and doing all that. You want to express interest in the position. And I can't stress this enough because I have learned from personal experience the power of a thank you note. I interviewed for a position once, and in the interview, we were talking about marketing. I have a marketing degree, but I don't do quote unquote marketing, 24/7. So we brought up marketing, and I mentioned the marketing things that I do in that role, and we moved on. Afterwards, in my thank you note, I brought that up again and I said, I mentioned that I created this handbook for students. I just thought I'd attach it here for you in an email, just so you can see. I thought, why not? It took me 30 extra seconds to find it on my computer, attach it, upload, send. When I was called back for a second interview, a different person in the room asked me about that handbook. And I actually had to caught me off guard because I thought, what handbook are you talking about? I thought, oh, That's right. I sent it to you. So this person forwarded my thank you note on to somebody that was in round two. So that was firsthand knowledge of how powerful a simple thank you note can be because it's your chance to have them remember your name again. So if there is anything that you want to express about the position or about your conversation, and again, you can show your passion again in terms of the a viral interview or a virtual interview. You can, express how excited you are, how passionate you are, and maybe give some examples of something. I mean, I always say don't expect a response because that's typical. So don't feel bad if you don't get a response. If you do, that's great. But this is more just a one-sided conversation. And then, of course, you want to debrief. So take notes for yourself as you start to go through the interview. You will want to, questions will start to repeat that you might think, oh, I could answer that better, or I could change my answer slightly. So you might want to review with a friend, with a career coach, and that's your way to improve because practice makes perfect. I say there's no bad interview. It is just one more step towards that perfect interview to hopefully the perfect dream job. So I will turn it over to Jerry if I have any more questions. I'm happy to answer if there's time. If not, I'm very excited and good luck to everybody.
Great, great. Wow, wonderful, wonderful, Caroline. That was wonderful. Um, I really appreciate how you really take a good, deep, close look at it from the interviewee standpoint and from the company standpoint. That's also, really good to understand both those perspectives. And what's ironic is there's another question that someone presented, and it kind of demonstrates both of those sides. She writes, "I've been on both sides of the interview, where I have said and heard others say, 'Please let me be clear and honest. I'm unfamiliar with some aspect of the job description. However, I am eager to learn more about the particular responsibility.'" Is that a good response, or would you respond differently?
I would add to it, and again, thinking of the ability, how can it's great to say that you're eager to learn more, but is there any way to prove that you are capable of, that you're able to learn more? So if it's, for example, a technical thing, you can say, I have learned all of these softwares and all of these different programs within, 12 weeks of being on a job, or I went through this training and I learned this. I know that I can learn this within the time frame that you're looking for, or you want to, it just provides a little more proof that you're capable of. I mean, you might know you're capable and your friends might know, but the people in the interview, um, you know they want to assure that you are capable of learning whatever that position or whatever that job description bullet point might be. So I would just add to.
No, that's great. Yeah. So not only demonstrate, basically you're demonstrating it, you're providing that evidence. That's perfect.
Mhm. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great. Well, I do want to say, Caroline, we have run up against time. So I really, well, personally, for myself and on behalf of everyone here at Corporate College, I really want to thank you for presenting this session today. I know a lot of people got so much helpful information out of it.
Awesome. Good.
Good,
Good.
good. And I love that you repeat it too. You really always, during that process, you always have to stay positive and stay honest too.
Mhm.
That's critical.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. For
Well,
sure.
everyone, I want to thank you also for joining us today. Want you to remember corporate college is, obviously still here to serve you in all different capacities besides learning, but also getting that next career step up. And as I've shared with you before, Caroline works in the Career Center, and it's really the Career Center's mission to provide really high quality career development services, not just to our students, not just to the alumni, but to the community at large. And they really provide it in that learner centered environment. They also provide virtual career exploration if you're looking to decide what you want to do next. They have assessment tools such as virtual job shadow, career spots, and my plan. And in addition, they also offer a really wide variety of virtual career related services and online programming, including workshops, individual coaching appointments, resume critiques, mock interviews. And I know Caroline mentioned that a few times, and also personalized assistance with your job search. All these services are free for students, alumni, and the community. So please check them out on the Tri-C website and visit career services at tri-c.edu. Or you can also call the Career Center by reaching them at their toll-free number, 933 5180. I'll just repeat that one more time in case you're writing it down. 866-933-5180. I'll also put it right here in the chat, but what I would say too, if you call, you can obviously get a hold of them. So follow up by receiving the information after today's session too in the presentation. And don't forget, when you visit corporate college and you visit our website, we also have additional services once you get that job too, or if you're training for that job with virtual classroom sessions or um, online self-paced programs, everything from leadership development, Lean Six Sigma, to even patient access specialist programs. Also, please feel free to rewatch this session if you wanted to catch a particular topic again, and feel free to share the link with your colleagues by visiting the Corporate College free webinar series page and clicking on the link. The link will be available in the next few days. And please, as always, stay up to date with us by following us on social media. So again, on behalf of the college, thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. And please, everyone, stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks again.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks, everyone.